In today's video, we're jumping back to our NHL offseason plan series. We've worked our way up to the 11th ranked team in the NHL, the Nashville Predators. What should we expect from them this offseason? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're working our way up from 32 all the way up to 1 in the teams ranked according to the regular season standings and looking at their off-season plans and what we should expect from them. We worked our way all the way up to number 11. Today we're on the Nashville Predators. So in case you're new to this series, what we're going to do is essentially recap the team season for 23-24, take a look at some of the top individual performances, examine how things have changed, like what trades they made throughout the offseason, look at their cap space, expiring contracts, draft picks, all those things that'll be upcoming to answer questions for what should we expect in the offseason. So let's get started first by recapping last year for the Nashville Predators. They ended up being a playoff team with 99 points, finished with a record of 47-30-5. They did have a first round loss to the Vancouver Canucks, but they did make things interesting at the very least. At one point, Nashville was not looking like they were trending in a good direction, and looked like they might be falling out of any hope for having a playoff spot. And essentially, the team had a big plan to go to a concert at the Sphere in Las Vegas. They canceled the plans abruptly. There was a lot of different opinions out there on whether or not they made the right move. But after canceling those plans and taking away a luxury from that team and something fun they had planned as a group, they went on a massive, really long winning streak, and it really turned the season around for the Nashville Predators. And new head coach Andrew Burnett is now, ended up being a finalist for the head coach of the year award, the Jack Adams Trophy. So all in all, there were certainly lots of things that were positive this year, and certainly things that they want to improve on as well. Looking at their team stats, goals for, not too bad, 10th in the league, 266. Goals against, just a little bit above average, 248 for 14th best. So overall, not too bad. Obviously, when you look at where they fit in the standings and where they looked finished in the playoffs and everything, playoff spot, like it makes sense. Everything kind of adds up. Special teams, though, could both use some work, especially the PK. The PK was 22nd in the league, 76.9. The power play, 21.6 for 16th best. I mean, the power play was good. You can't really be terribly upset with a 21% conversion rate, but considering how good some of the other power plays around the league, I guess if you want to really be a more serious cup contender, having one that's considered more elite, certainly good to have in your back pocket. But again, nothing to really be terribly upset about there. 21.6 is great. The PK, too far from 80%. You at least want 80, if not better. So they have some work to do on that front. Up front, top performers. Philip Forsberg, no surprise, led this team again, 48 goals, 94 points. I know when he signed his long-term contract, you kind of wonder sometimes if you're going to see continued growth and continued consistent performance. Some players in a contract year will, really explode, and sometimes they never really live up to the hype. And Nashville's had that happen a few occasions, especially in the case where they brought in a guy like Matt Duchene on a big contract, ended up buying him out. But Forsberg has not disappointed. He's continuing to lead and get better. Roman Josi was number 2 in the team, still logging big minutes in the Norris conversation year after year. 85 points. Just phenomenal. Can't say enough good things about Josi. Another phenomenal season. Gustav Nyquist. Nyquist was a nice find for them. They brought in and really rejuvenated his career at 75 points. That's the best output we've seen in a Nyquist in a long time. So, at the end of the day, you can't complain about that at all. Ryan O'Reilly also was a great free agent signing. Comes in 4th on the team and scoring 69 points. And then there was a bit of a drop-off after that. Tommy Novak, number 5 with 45 points. So Novak himself had a good season, got himself extended. But like I said, after the top 4 guys, definitely a bit of a drop-off. So it's definitely a top-heavy team. Forsberg, Josi, and then you get like Nyquist, O'Reilly, and then after that's Novak. And, they probably could use a little bit more, like another impact player to play up with those guys. That also would help the power play, possibly go from good to great. So we'll see what they do, but certainly some good stuff there. UC Saros didn't have I certainly wouldn't call it a Vezina type performance, but it wasn't horrible either. But, I do wonder about signing him long term. It's a big question we're going to talk about later. Finished with a record of 35-24-5, 2.86 goals against and a .906 save percentage. Ideally, Saros can definitely be a bit better than that. Obviously, a product of the team in front of him to some degree as well. But I'm sure that Saros would know and like to think he can be a bit better for sure. As far as changes we saw throughout the year, they were somewhat busy, but not overly. They did make some moves closer to the deadline. They traded Yakov Trenin to the Avalanche, where they got a third-round pick in return. Throughout the year, they did pick up Anthony Beauvillier and Jason Zucker. They also traded Denis Gurianov, who they had picked up, to the Flyers for Wade Allison. Then at the end of the year, once games were all completed after the playoffs, they traded defenseman Ryan McDonagh, which was a trade that kind of caught a lot of people off guard in the midst of the playoffs. But they did trade McDonagh back to Tampa, where they get a second and seventh round picks. So certainly some turnover on that blue line. In a team that's looking to accommodate McDonagh, because it was said by Barry Trotz that McDonagh had advised that he's liked his time in Nashville and everything, but if there was an opportunity for him to get back to Tampa, that he'd be most appreciative if they could explore it. Looking at their salary cap situation heading into the offseason, they have $26.3 million available right now. They have 15 contracts already signed for next season, so maximum of 23-man roster. You're looking at about 7 or 8 contracts that need to be added to that, and that's where the $26 million will be allocated. So certainly a decent amount to work with by for sure, but at the same time it's not as much as you might think when you break it down to all those players. Looking at their list of contracts for players that are on expiring deals that need to be either re-signed or possibly let go and replaced, looking at restricted free agents like Jared Anderson-Dolan, Wade Allison, and Liam Foudy. None of those guys are going to cost you big money. I'm not sure what the appetite is to bring some of these guys back. Anderson-Dolan and Foudy, I believe, are both waiver pickups throughout the year. Wade Allison, as we know, was picked up from Gurianov from the Flyers. Like I said, they'll all be reasonably cheap deals. I think to some degree there's a possibility they bring them back. There's also a possibility they move on. I wouldn't really label any of these players as impact kind of guys. So it's hard to say which direction the organization is heading right now, but they do have to make decisions on those 3 guys. On the UFA front, I'm going to say that all or most of these guys probably aren't returning. You get Anthony Beauvillier, Jason Zucker, Kiefer Sherwood, Tyson Barrie, Alex Carrier, and Kevin Lankinen. I know Tyson Barrie's gone for sure. They were trying to move him for the better part of the year. He had requested a trade, obviously looking for a better role, more ice time, consistent play, that type of stuff. Beauvillier, now of course he's played under Barry Trotz for an extended time. Of course, started with the New York Islanders when he was there. Maybe they bring Beauvillier back. I'm not sure. It's not like he was doing the greatest, so it is possible they move on. I suggest probably we're going to see everybody else in that group likely be the same. I know Carrier had a decent amount of interest. Maybe he returns, but a lot of these guys, when they're already UFAs going into the latter part of the offseason before free agency starts, that tells us a couple of things. One, that the organization is either content with letting them go, or they're not sure, or the players really insisting on kind of checking the market and seeing where things are at. So good possibility there that there's not many of those expiring deals that do return. So we'll see. Obviously, the guys within the organization can take some spots, or they'll explore trades and free agency to some extent as well. Heading into the 2024 draft, of course, Barry Trotz is in a pretty good spot here. Has 9 picks going into the draft, including their first-round pick, which will be number 22 overall. They've got 3 picks in the second round and 2 picks in the third and fourth round. So I don't expect Barry Trotz and the Predators to make 3 second-round picks. I wouldn't be surprised if they either combine those to try to move up to get another first-rounder, or maybe they go after at least one roster player who can come in and be an impact player for this franchise. Like I said, there's certainly some things looking at the roster, what their needs are. They need to make a decision on UC Saros. Obviously, the big question is, are you extending him or are you trading him? And we've seen a variety of reports suggesting both things. I know Barry Trotz, whenever he's spoken publicly, has pretty well always said that he wants to extend Saros. I think there was a point where he did admit that he did have some exploratory trade talks, but for the most part, most of the rhetoric coming out of Nashville is they want to sign him. And I do wonder if that's more posturing than anything. As much as he's a great goalie, you do have Askarov waiting in the wings here. So maybe they want to run with Saros and Askarov for a little while. The only thing is if Saros has been rumored to be looking for a long-term contract. So, if you're looking at signing him for 7-8 years, that's not going to give confidence to Askarov anytime soon that he's going to be able to be the starting goaltender when you have a big ticket like that in front of you. So at the same time, that's why I'm not sure it makes sense. Unless Saros is willing to take a short-term, 2 to 3 year contract while you bring up Askarov and you can have a tandem, I don't know that scenario really works out. We've heard of varying degrees of trade interest from teams that are really looking to upgrade goaltending. We've heard a bit about the Los Angeles Kings. We've heard the New Jersey Devils, to some extent Ottawa. We have heard a lot about Ottawa, not necessarily linked to Saros. So there's been some reports that GM Steve Staios has at least reached out, kicked tires a little bit, but I don't think they've gotten too far. Simply they focus more so on guys like Markstrom and Allmark, from what we've heard in the news and rumor reports from different insiders. But yeah, there's lots of interest out there for sure. There's a lot of teams kind of monitoring that UC Saros scenario and situation. If he is going to become available, that they'd love to get a crack at him. So we'll see. I don't know. Personally, I still think there's a greater chance he gets moved than signed, because they're going to end up holding down another goalie now, unless that goalie is somebody that they decide to move on from. Saros is, I guess, young enough that he could still have a big stretch of his career. And if you sign him, you're going to box another guy out, and maybe they're comfortable with that. We'll have to wait and see. Like I said, they have lots of draft currency, so the big question is, are you going to use those picks, or are you going to move up in the draft? Are you going to find some roster help? What's it going to be? And I think it could be a combination of things. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Barry Trotz and the Predators use some of those picks to move, to get up higher in the draft. So whether it's taking their first rounder and, a second and third or something and trying to go up higher in the first round, I wouldn't rule that out. Or we could see them take, maybe 2 of those seconds and try to get up another late first or something. If there's players there that they really like, it's going to boil down to their scouting team and what the amateur scouts are telling everybody here and what their feelings are on some of these players. If they're comfortable, they can get guys they really like and stay where they're at, then they'll do that, of course. It makes sense. So we could see trades involving picks for, experienced help that can come in right now. Like as of right now, they've only got 4 NHL defensemen signed for next year. One of those includes Dante Fabro, who's been mentioned in the rumor mill for over a year, of somebody who they could move. I don't think they're super, thrilled with how Fabro's turned out. I think they always thought he had potential to be, a higher, more impact defenseman. He's obviously proven to be, serviceable. Okay. I still think it's possible he could be moved. So you have a lot of openings back there on the back end. So you're looking around at some UFA defensemen or guys that could be available for trade. Wouldn't rule out, them being players in some of those conversations for sure. Now, another big piece of, to discuss here is Nyquist. Nyquist comes in, 75 points last year. Like I said, he was a huge part of their offense. He's going to be 35 years old, had a really good season. Do you extend him? And if so, what does that look like? That's another big decision you got to make. And not only that, of course, the players involved in that too. So I would assume, considering he's had some of the best production of his career, that he'd absolutely be interested in extending and staying. So the conversation then becomes, what does that look like? How long are you comfortable with for term? What kind of money? I'm sure he's looking for a raise. You got to factor all that in as well. Like I said, there's room on this team with the salary cap, with their draft currency, some of the players that they might be willing to move on from, that they could find themselves a couple of 1 or 2 impact players via trade too. I wouldn't rule out them being involved in the Marty Necas, trade talk with the Hurricanes, or the Trevor Zegras talk with the Anaheim Ducks. I'm not saying for sure they're going to land one of those guys, but that type of player. There's been a lot of questions about Carolina. Would they be a team that gets involved in goaltending trade talk? There's been some rumblings about there. So, maybe Necas is involved in a deal for Saros. That might be something that could help both teams. We've heard Detroit be a team that's been, Elliot Friedman mentioned them the other day about, Yzerman might be intrigued in what's out there on the market. Would he try to make a play for a guy like Saros? And what would you be able to get out of Detroit for that type of deal? I would suspect that if they do trade Saros, they're looking for multiple pieces coming back, including a good defenseman for sure. If not a good defenseman and a good forward. Because they don't need necessarily a goaltender unless they get somebody who's, I guess, more of a, 1A, 1B type of guy, like a tandem guy or a backup or something like that. It's hard to say what they can do, but I mean, after a 99-point season, I can understand why Trotz might be reluctant to run with a somewhat rookie goalie next year, right? So it's going to be tricky. It's hard to say how they proceed here. They don't necessarily have to trade Saros just yet either. If they don't sign him, they're not obligated to really do anything here. They can ride it out, but of course, taking him to free agency is risky. But you can talk to him plenty throughout the year. All that's going to depend on how he and his agent feel and if they're willing to do that. So at the end of the day, lots of big questions here. Obviously in between the pipes, on the back end, will it be a player to add more offense, which I know has been a priority for them as well. So lots of things to be to looking forward to and see what they expect from them to do. But at the end of the day, when we're all said and done, they need to answer their goaltending question first and foremost. They need to add on the back end. They need to add in the forward group. So I expect Barry Trotz and his team here to be busy between free agency and at least a couple of trades for sure. So let me know your thoughts on the Predators and expectations for their offseason plans down in the comments here. We'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.